what if it all starts now with this data and making meaning of it to accelerate the business, to light up the CFO's eyes when they hear that what we can do with accelerating deal velocity and changing how much revenue you can bring in a year. I mean, that's an exciting point.
I'm Hal Marcus.
And I'm Memme and Hal.
And this is Meeting of the Minds, the legal AI podcast from Evisort.
We interview lawyers, professors, and legal operations pioneers that are pushing the envelope.
Leaders using technology to drive great business outcomes and shape the future of the profession. So, Memme, how perfect is this for our inaugural episode of the reboot of Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast? We interviewed Jenn McCarron, incoming CLOC president and legal operations true pioneer.
Yeah, and I can think of no better place to do such an interview than Harvard Law School and its hallowed halls. Of course, me and Evisort's CEO, Jerry Ting, we teach a reading group there once a year on startup entrepreneurship and innovations in legal technology. Jenn was gracious enough to talk to our students the morning of this interview, and then also was able to attend the Executive Innovation Summit, which was a program facilitated by the Center on the Legal Profession at Harvard, which brought legal leaders from across the country to discuss cutting-edge issues in legal departments like AI.
Yeah, that was a great event. But what I really also loved was that right before we conducted this interview, we were in the room, in the podcast studio at Harvard, while Jenn interviewed Professor David Wilkins of Harvard Law School. And she makes reference to it a few times. They had a fascinating conversation about the state of the industry, the impact of AI, and she's going to release that on CLOC Talk. So that should be a great thing for people to listen to. And of course, we're doing all of this and putting this out right on the eve of CGI, the CLOC Global Institute in Las Vegas.
Awesome. Yeah, well, without further ado, I think today's conversation really does set the scene for future conversations around legal technology, legal innovations, and legal operations, and excited for folks to listen.
All right, let's jump in.
Jenn, you've had an incredible run of things, and things seem to just be getting better. You built one of the leading legal operations teams and technical stacks at Netflix, which was one of the first Fortune 100 companies to roll out AI comprehensively across your legal operations team. You're also the president of CLOC right now and gearing up in a month or so to go to CLOC's Global Institute in Las Vegas. And you're also having some personal changes, moving to New York and really writing the next chapter for the entire legal ops industry in your new ideas around Legal Ops 3.0, which I'm excited to dive in today.
And literally writing the chapters.
Yes.
And so, yeah, as you're paving the way for the next generation of legal operations professionals, we're excited to talk to you about how you're lifting the role for everyone to achieve new heights.
Love lifting heavy things in keeping with the flow of my life. Yes.
Excellent. And I mean, we're going to talk a lot today about Legal Ops 3.0, but I think before we get there, I'd love to talk about 1 and 2.0.
Yes.
And really how this domain has grown, developed, and evolved into the place we are today.
Yes. Legal Ops 1.0, I would say, was formed in the 2000s, post-millennium corporate run of starting to care more about cost management and starting to expect legal departments to cost manage. And Mike Haven said this really well earlier in class when we were all co-teaching at the Harvard Law 3L class. 2008 and the financial crisis of that just accelerated or strengthened the magnifying glass on cost consciousness and Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and all the important factors of running a legal department and keeping a company in compliance. That's when we saw some of these business lawyer-minded folks come together. They came together at the banks on the East Coast. They came together in the Silicon Valley companies and started business managing the legal department. And many had JDs, some had MBAs, some had neither, but were just really good business stewards. That's what I call Legal Ops 1.0, is this founders group, some of which went on to found CLOC, the Corporate Legal Ops Consortium. And it started with financial management and putting systems tech data around that, engaging the firms and managing firms, the matters of from that with tech, with data, and taking a budgetary lens over the whole department and advising on how to run a legal department or your chief legal officer and your legal leadership. That's 1.0. And I came online in this field in 2012, 2013, while my VP, Steve Harmon, who I'd call a 1.0er, was doing this already at scale and started to understudy this work there. And he was pushing forward heavily on the tech and the project management expansion. So 1.0, I think, expanded to incorporate those areas. And he was a unique leader in that he has an engineering undergrad and then went to law school. So he can really understand, he thinks as a systems person, and was able to nest in-house an IT function inside his team, inside legal. And so we were all in this IT or tech function building. And just to jump forward to 2.0, CLOC gets invented. It really solidifies as an org. It puts out the CLOC Core 12, up to 12 different competencies or areas that become or can become your focus in legal ops. And tech starts to really blow out. But I look at 2.0 more as an era of some of us up-and-comers or predecessors or next in line after the 1.0ers. We were trained by them. We took all their designs. We emulated their departments of legal ops or tech or financial management. And we ran in and we did exactly that, but it was slightly new flavor, maybe more and more of a bend towards tech. And as I wrote, it's a lot of the steam and the designs of the initial engine in that CLOC Core 12. Financial management, knowledge management, project management, practice area management, technology, InfoGov is in there, organizational design is in there, and a couple of others. That's the 1.0, 2.0 evolution. So it has a lot. There's a lot in there.
All right. And that brings us to what you're now dubbing Legal Ops 3.0.
Yes.
So, and you've laid that out just recently as we record this in a post as sort of three core principles. Why don't we go through those one at a time? First one, relatively straightforward. I mean, legal ops should be centered around technology.
Yes.
Allocating resources, agency, and priority.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
So in some of this writing, it's not what I said. It's what I didn't say also. And it's not saying it to be crude.
By all means, be crude.
But
that's part of our tagline.
I don't want to be crude because we're all in these roles that cover aspects of the Core 12. And you will all continue in those roles and they will keep blossoming and changing and growing and going forward. So this isn't hit the panic button level. This is I am building a new level on the house, kind of a third story. Some will go up first and we'll put in air conditioning and heating and we'll build it out, and others will come up later. Some may stay in the 2.0 style roles for a while. That's okay. This all depends on the maturity of the org you are in, not you as a person, or this is not a personal attack on anyone as their role inside the org. All that said, as my disclaimer, technology, there's no financial management in the Legal Ops 3.0 world. That doesn't mean it stops. It doesn't go away. That has to be done and performed. But we hope by now that becomes such...
It's baked in.
It's baked into the department, and the leadership knows how to budget. The things are running, and the finance partners are caught up on, there's some specialty to the legal domain of finance, especially around outside counsel management. But by now, they should be learning some of these things. If we had these 1.0, 2.0 folks in there for a decade, laying it all out, laying the foundation, laying the tracks, shouldn't we be handing that over to finance or others to run now sustainably? That no longer, I believe, is that a part of this. That is not strategy anymore. It's an important, hygienic part of running a business. But I don't believe that that's that. So this first pillar here, technology, is meant to say it's all about, not only all about technology that we put in to change how the profession gets performed. To David Wilkins' earlier point on our other podcast, you don't just put in tech to do an A/B linear change on a workflow, even though that's where we all have to start. This is almost like a 4D change in how professionals do their work and the practice of law. And so we have to be putting in technology that draws them in and solves problems on another level that does that. And it takes a lot of iteration, innovation. And what I wrote in the article was, we have to have the tech competency. Is it IT? Is it engineering? Is it enterprise, IT, and eng? It's a mix of them all. We need that in legal. That's my latest learning, is where I saw this stuff happen best. When I was at Cisco and when I was at Netflix, legal tech was inside legal for that foundational number of years, running so fast with budget and getting it all in so that we can figure out of everything 50 things we put in, okay, what are the 15 technologies that produce this data set that starts to drive metrics of value or meaningful data? And it has to all be about that, because of the other pillars, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yeah, and exactly. We got 2 more pillars to cover, but I want to pick up on what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this because you make the case that legal ops transformation needs to be led from within legal, needs to be managed in legal.
Yes.
And yet the impact needs to go way beyond legal.
Yes.
And that this warrants attention from the C-suite.
Yes.
Maybe a role in the C-suite. How do you reconcile those two?
Sure. I don't know that you're going to put a tech team inside the C-suite right now, where we are in the evolution of legal tech. And what I'm still talking about are, whether it's legal ops or strategic ops, you're taking the workflow of the professionals and trying to push it and pull it through technology in a better way to produce data. And look, we're in a legal realm here, but much of the workflows of legal go out to and across the business. Legal and finance are examples of 2 big orgs that service everyone, and legal really as a service org is servicing every part of the business.
Right.
So it becomes cross-functional immediately. You build one workflow, it's cross-functional. Most of the legal workflows we build are to serve the business and keep legal out of it until they need to be engaged or escalated to. Self-service, your NDA, etc.
Because everyone's afraid they're just going to say no.
Right. So you need folks in the C-suite in a strategic ops role to be able to do this story crafting and this narrative assembly of all of this data means. But that doesn't mean you have an IT team up in the C-suite. And we have to look at all of these as phases. Everything's temporal or tied to a season. If you do this right, first of all, if you do this role right, you should be automating yourself out of your role over a number of years. We're doing transformation work, not sit and park it and do the same thing over and over work. Our roles will shift. If you do this right, this happened at Cisco. They founded the tech inside legal. It matured in a phase after a few years. They moved it over to IT. It matured some more, but there was reorgs, budgetary limitations. It came back from tech into legal. And it stayed there, and then they came up in like Rev 3 with a kind of cost cross billing, like whatever they call that. I'm forgetting that term because I didn't do it at Netflix, where you just bill the other department for the services. They got a better collaborative budget around legal having all the power, but then the decision-making power and IT paying for it. And I write about this in the article. If you're only relying on IT or engineering, they're going to give you this much. And my hands are showing a very few inch worth of important but few features.
Noted in the
and
record.
you have to do this much. And now my hands are spread out as far as they can go. I'm 5'9", so that's 5'9" versus 3 inches. It'll happen faster, at least foundationally, to build if it's inside legal. And it could be hard to stay there, keep it there forever. And like I talked about the example at Cisco, a tech function could get so good and the tech so scaled that it might have to go to an engineering or back to IT. And the company could have those kinds of shifts. Legal could go, we need to lean out and not carry staff that aren't legal or professionals or lawyers. I just read that somewhere online. So you have to be able to ride the tide and go with these changes, but I do believe those who put tech competency in their departments and fund it like a startup will get there faster.
That's incredible. And moving into point number 2 for Legal Ops 3.0, you state that legal ops should be centered on the data from technology.
Yeah, look, I'm guilty of this too. Somewhere along the way, we got lost and I implemented the tech. Give me a raise. I want a promotion. I'm amazing. I am Jenn McCarron. And now another one's implemented and now another. And drawing out data as the crown jewel here in the new 3.0 means technology is only an instrument. These are only instruments to get us meaning. They're not the end point. And I think as technologists, or as we focus on that over the years, sometimes the endpoints become the endpoints, and we need to think broader. What data is this putting out, and how do you get these workflows producing meaningful data? Someone told me a story once in the industry. They put in a CLM. They did the hard driving work of project managing this CLM, contract lifecycle management solution, into place. It goes live after a number of months, and their legal folks, leaders, partners say, I don't know what this does for us now, though. Like, okay, now it's in, so what? Like, they didn't have a story. And then the person doing it didn't have the next phase really mapped out. Well, now we're going to get data on A and B and C. Like, they were kind of drawing a blank and their job ended from that because that connection wasn't made. This is all about what these instruments give back to us. And I said this in the article, and I saw this, Meme, when we turned on Evisort for the entire enterprise at Netflix, and we saw how much AI metadata came with that. We're talking millions. And I had a paradigm shift right there. I was like, wait, now what? What if my career starts now? What if all of this was, to David Wilkins, Harvard Law School professor's point, we were just cavemen with fire face. Very important phase to evolution, just running around and drawing pictures on the walls and putting in tech and failing here, succeeding there, getting to know what really is valuable to an enterprise and to whom within legal or the enterprise. What if it all starts now with this data and making meaning of it to accelerate the business, to light up the CFO's eyes when they hear that what we can do with accelerating deal velocity and changing how much revenue you can bring in a year? I mean, that's an exciting point.
And I think that's huge because so often the focus here around legal ops becomes sort of insular within legal. It's about, let's take what legal is doing and just do it more efficiently. And that's considered a coup so much of the time. But that's just so limited. The broader implications that you're talking about of the data that you're deriving is about empowering the entire business.
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits that come out of that? What are some of the things that really captured people's attention?
I saw this over and over while I was at Netflix, and someone on my team used to come to me and say, at what point do I just go build this for HR or for finance? Because they're lined up, right? We put these solutions out in front of our legal practices so that their forms, contracts, and work product and service offering goes a little faster or a little more automated or a little more self-service, a little less manual. And now HR's out front getting those talent. It was an offer letter tool, and they loved it so much that they came back to us with 10 ideas to enhance the workflow. And if you can add this and make it go left instead of right when the sky is blue on a Wednesday, now we can give our HR finance partners 5 days and the IT person, and then we can tell the security or the IT tech team initiate a laptop. And we had to stop. We had to pause them, unfortunately, because if we said yes to all of that, we'd be working for 3 other teams. And then when my legal leadership's like, hey, where are you? And it's like, well, we're building the sickest offer letter. We've just automated offer letters end to end. And no one even has to think or breathe at this company with it. That's a very valuable thing to build. But that's an example of, we had to pull ourselves back a lot because the tech more often took off cross-functionally with these teams than it did within legal. And there's a balancing act there, and you can't let yourself get swept away unless you have leaders who are like, go all the way. And they'll watch you come back around again and scoop legal in. So I think it's a good tension to have. And this is a point Mary O'Carroll made over the years too, is that if done right, and why we all think this should become strategic ops, is quickly these workflows ascend to be more about cross-functional teams and legal, not just legal. So I actually saw more solving that way potential than I did within legal, it seems.
And we have so much conversation to be had about the value of data in legal and how that helps us speak a common language to other business units and drive value cross-functionally. But I do want to get to, pillar 3 of Legal Ops 3.0, which is that, and I'm one who loves space and space law, so I appreciate the kind of, the rocket fuel and engine analogies here, but technology and data are the fuel and engines, but not the destination. Together, they lead us to storytelling, which is the next frontier we're all seeking. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Some of you may know I'm obsessed with narrative, period. I live with someone who makes narrative all day. I just was inside the Hollywood machine for years. I am a songwriter. I love a PowerPoint presentation. I love beginning, middles, and ends. And I love the new equilibrium and the journey to get there. So this is both generic storytelling and then a very specific kind of, this isn't your just bedtime story and fall asleep and enter dreamland storytelling. I kept saying to myself when I saw the Evasort dataset size come out, like, well, now what and so what? And who's going to make the stories come out of it, tie different bundles of data together with folks from legal asking the questions, with folks from the CFO's office or the accountant's office asking the questions that help them run the business better? Someone has to sit there and craft all of that with these data points. And who is that going to be? I think it should be us. I want that to be me. I want to be there pulling all that together. I've put the tech in for years. I've done this for 12 years. I've been producing big data sets for years. Now they're huge. They're at a scale that is so big. And therefore, if we don't get in there and carve stories out, so dead until we bring them to life. And I think that that is a certain kind of analytical and creative. It involves data science, but it's not straight data science. It's all of the above, a couple disciplines in there of pulling data together, working with your folks, your partners, asking these questions and trying through iterative, almost dashboarding back to them. Is this what you mean? I think that is the question. That should be the question tattooed on all the legal ops arms. We need an arm for this, not a neck, so that we can go from like shoulder to wrist. Is this what you mean? And you show this data set visualized or the data story to the person, the CFO, and they go, yes, but can you make it cut this way, cut that, cut the other? Like you have to build that together. No one just produces a version 1 data story that's meaningful. So there's a whole world of iteration there of story making. And take these stories to the C-suite and have them run the company with them. That's where we need to go. And we have the power, the stack, as you said. Now we're producing the data. I think all we need is to upskill there on our storytelling in using the data. And I think that all 3 of these is the third story of the house for this industry of legal ops and tech.
Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, we talk about how data is the new oil, right? And
yes.
The most important data at organizations a lot of times is trapped in business documents and contracts. And to your point, legal operations has access to this valuable data in a world where every other business unit is kind of diving in and looking at spreadsheets and dashboards and data all day.
Yeah.
Yet the organization with the most relevant data to the business is the one that might be looking at data a little bit less. And so, I mean, leaning into that, could you provide just some information to someone who hears this and says, I want to move into strategic ops. I want to take my career and begin to have influence at that C-suite level because I know there's an impact that's valuable that we can have with some of this information.
Yeah.
How does one try to shape their career and craft it in a way where they can move from that 1 or 2.0 into 3.0?
Well, This is going to be a bit of my next blog post. So the preview on this is we have to stop with breadth, and we have to be willing in our careers to go into depth, more depth. Everything I've learned to become this, I don't know, am I a generalist? I don't know if I am. The way I just ran that version of the Netflix team had breadth. It had financial management, knowledge management, project management, and then the tech team. I put most of my focus on the tech team and let the others build themselves up under my leadership. But I'll use me as the example with strategic ops. I never want to do knowledge management, project management, and financial management again. Like, drop the rock, drop the breadth, and narrow on things, and don't be afraid to. And then when I think of the beginning of my career in this at Cisco, it was all depth. It was knowledge management, data, and the tech around it in this tech stack that was half enterprise tech repurposed and then half custom built tech for that legal group that I designed. So it's knowledge management underpinned by tech and data, depth. What came from that, doing that for 4 to 5 years, was mastery, was writing up frameworks and ways to do this at any size enterprise that went into the CLOC content kind of wheel. And that deck, even my framework, got spat out at, 4 dozen companies called me over the next 2 years. Like, we have your slides from the KM framework presentation. I'm like, cool. Like, I went deep. All I did was put my head down and fail and succeed and build, and I came out something different. And people told me, you're a thought leader, which I still find so funny. I was like, okay, I'm a thought leader. Depth, we should be focusing on 1.2 areas in our roles and doing them thoroughly to finish. We have to learn how to finish things to completion, and we should be moving that work once it gets completed. Like, if you want to do that strategic ops and come up to the 3rd floor here, you have to be willing to part with work, part with scope, set Sally up to take it on now, because this is now her challenge. Some folks on my team at Netflix built the whole matter structure data intake for all the matters. And then we said, well, one of them should scale and outsource that entry-level work to like an elevator or partner, so that they're not doing the same thing. So you have to be willing to change your scope and your role every year and a half or so after you've packaged something. This is transformational work. And so you're always moving, getting new scope, growing, and just look around these environments we're in and these corporations. There's a tech project that needs help. Work in. If you're not officially on that project, volunteer 10 hours a week of your own time. Work in, learn, get mentorship, set of tasks, add value. You'll be in that project in no time. And draw yourself towards tech or data-driven projects or storytelling with those data points. I think that's what I've done over the years. I don't always wait for people to task me with it in scope. The interesting career thrusting that's happened is when I reach for something outside the scope of what they told me to do. And I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Now you're bringing some unexpected value.
Yeah. And then experimenting there. One time someone had to tell me to do something outside my scope, and I was being defiant, like, I hate this. Don't tell me what to do. This is my manager. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. Make a video. And I did it anyway because I didn't want to lose the job. And then I found something there. And in me that professionally was very meaningful and I was very talented with. And then I developed hard skill on. So I don't know if I've answered the question other than do fewer things, do the things that light you up, always be ready to let go and transform. And the job you had last year, let that die. Like, let things die and face a little of that unknown. And at some point, don't rely on job bullets anymore. Go 1 or 2 job bullets out on your own to make that kind of reach within your reach.
This job barely existed 10 years ago.
It didn't exist.
So it's going to keep changing that way. And that touches on something I wanted to ask you about. Memme mentioned at the beginning, we're here at Harvard. Among the activities we're doing here, we've got our Executive Innovation Summit. Earlier today, you spoke at Memme's and Jerry's class for the students, for the 3 Ls on technology and innovation. You said a couple of things there I found interesting. And it's just what you were talking about right now. Learn the things you're passionate about. That becomes your differentiator. And the second one in particular that I like, train yourself on being uncomfortable and writing that.
I'm not sure
I'm quoting you right here. I'm
this
paraphrasing.
Is the game.
But yeah, because again, this role, we don't know what it's going to be in 5 years, do we? I mean, you've got probably the best window into the future of this.
And this is so wild. I have no idea where I'm even going to work next. Like, I'm looking at nothing but blank canvas right now. And it's so exciting because I'm going to draw it with this great network I have. We don't know. And look, that's okay. Not everyone has to draw against a blank canvas. Some of us like that. But it is uncomfortable to look at a blank canvas. I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments in my transition right now where my breath is taken away because I'm like, oh, there's nothing. And it's the same feeling I get when I'm starting a song or I'm in the middle of crafting a song where songwriting is not pleasurable. It's actually an exercise in torture. It's torture. And there's something beating in you that's like, there's an idea, there's something, I know that something is coming. And I don't know what it is. Here's a bad verse. Here's a bad verse. Here's a bad verse. And when you write with people, they're like, that sucks. Well, that sucks. No, that sucks. And these are like my brilliant little word puzzles. No, keep going, keep going. And then I'll say something off the cuff, like just Jenn going, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll go, that's it. And I'm like, what? That is it? After my 10 brilliantly generated poetic lines, the 11th one that I didn't, quote, care about, that was a joke, that's it. It's torture. And then I go home with a framework of a song and I have to obsessively iterate my brain until I've solved this puzzle. That's what our careers are. That's what these projects are. That's what this work is. And the more you can train your brain to not quit when you're uncomfortable, but to just press on, bond with people over it. I think CLOC is a group formed on uncomfortability. And we all bond around it. And then we go, oh my God, we have a group at least that gets it. And we're seen and understood in that respect. And it's a very powerful floor beneath us. But I started with the 3 L's in the Harvard Law class. I almost was like, this is why you need to go to the gym and do planks and do plank dips or balance. But I do think that there's a physical component to our experience. It's not just a mental spreadsheet game. If you're a person who's agile and supple and can move fast on your feet and be flexible, and when you have a weakness, go towards it and strengthen it, those things really play out well in these work settings where it is endless problems that you could feel like you're in an avalanche solving.
I got to pick up on this. You know, I'm a songwriter as well.
Yes.
And I totally relate to what you're saying. Although if I told anyone in my family that it's torture, they would just be like, then stop. What's wrong with you? So I won't say that to them. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. Yeah. That is how it feels. I'll take it one step further. When I write something that makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, ooh, that's a scary line. Where did that come from? What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's when I know I'm onto something.
Yeah.
Then you're getting closer to truth and something that's actually going to have an impact.
Right.
And I do think there's an analogy there for the rest of work life.
Yeah. You have to go towards that. Where you're weak, where you're uncomfortable, go towards the darkness. Like, go towards that. There are answers there. Where you're resistant. Where I was to that old manager of mine, like, come on, bro. I don't want to make a video. I'm here to tech program manage these 10 tech things I was working on. And he's like, no, the 11th thing, make the video, watch. And he forced me to do it. And it's my first video ever. I was monotonous and sad. I was like, knowledge management is the practice of dissemination. I said dissemination so many times. And now if I did a video, like I did 60 or so, 63 videos at Cisco by the time I wrapped there.
See, now I'm afraid I'm going to say dissemination a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, we're all going to say dissemination for the rest of the night. But my 60th video at Netflix, I had like a tone. I was like, welcome to the Friday Minute. I'm Jenn McCarron. And even the way I say my name, if I said that to a room of Cisco people right now, they'd light up because psychologically they listened and watched all my training videos. It's such a journey, but I didn't know that in the beginning. It was torture.
Looking at the elevation of legal operations leaders and making sure that folks move to more strategic roles instead of maybe being trapped in more administrative tasks, which is, I think, kind of maybe early on in this industry where folks were. That's going to be a big jump to make, I think, for many folks.
Folks weren't in admin tasks early in the industry. I think they were, like when I think of Chris Coates, Steve Harmon, Lisa Connie, they were planning the financial budget of the entire department. And some of these companies, I mean, they could have close to $1 billion budget. But then stuff gets tacked on because they're such great doers. It's like, can you plan the offsite? And that's where I'm dodging offsite planning for the rest of my life because I've planned a few. Like that kind of stuff. And there's an admin-y that comes over from when admins themselves graduate up in a legal environment. Legal admin, legal assistant. Do they graduate to paralegal? Sometimes they can't shed those admin-y tasks, or they don't want to because they are really good at administrating and snapping their fingers and running this exec's world. But if you want to get strategic, at some point you must walk or drop those tasks. And if that company or firm can't see you that way, those are the signs you get that you start thinking about leaving that environment. And we've all left an environment because sometimes you cannot break the ceiling of the floor you came in on. There's just a limited window. Some places you can go from mailroom person to exec VP. Someone in my family did this at HBO, like started in the mailroom and now she made Succession, you guys. She was the content exec on Succession, like sorted the mail there 25 years ago.
As David Geffen back in the day.
Geffen did it, and that's a big story. And that can still happen, I believe, in those outlier cases. But for the rest of us, we have to do the work to get to strategic, and it's okay. I'm going to talk about career frameworks for legal ops folks across a few archetypes at CGI in May. And one of the notes in there I'm going to emphasize is take your time. Mastery, depth, iteration, failure, success, it takes years. And if you're doing this tech thing, it really does take 3 years wherever you are. Even us at Netflix partnering to bring Evisort online, it took 3 years. And battles. I mean, I fought with all of you at some point. And here we are now celebrating, clinking glasses, best of friends, partnering, telling the story. We did it. But it takes a long time, and it's okay to give yourself a 5 to 10 year roadmap to get to strategic, because your leadership or that org, they might not be there. So you might be the one building all the foundational stuff for a minute before it ascends.
And I love that. And talking about our relationship, I've known you for several years now, Jen, and you're some of the most excited and energetic I've seen you for a while.
Yeah.
You know what?
I'm very pumped up.
Yeah. How does it speak to you personally? And just like this phase you're in, how do you see it for yourself and kind of the impact you're going to be having in the next few months and years?
I'm very excited. I shared with a few of you at drinks last night. I was at Netflix for 5.5 years. I was at Spotify for 1.5 years. Those places are info dense. You do 1 year of work, it equals 3 years of work somewhere else, just by way of the pace, the density, the expectation. And you have to get it all done in a 28-minute meeting, and don't be late, and everyone's wrapping up at 29 minutes. Like, it is so fast, it can make you motion sick. And I loved the speed and the thrill of that. But sometimes you don't look up. Like, you're just heads down cranking. So I did 5.5 years of work there. I think it's 10 years of output that I get to sit and unpack a little bit now and go, what just happened? What was that guest cast admin tool we just accidentally innovated that someone could go make that a startup right now and sell that to other studios? I'm excited for the time to reflect on all of that. And then as I reflect, take those learnings to this strategic ops third story and go, this is how we do it at the topmost level at a company. So I'm a futurist. I live in a vision of the future. And so I get to really draw all of that out now and approach it and try to draw my way to something. And with the voices and inputs from everyone in our industry, like, we're drawing it. I am you, everyone, like as in vous, you. And you are me, and we're going forward.
We've been talking so positively about the future and the opportunities ahead. So we've got to pull it back down to earth for the last thing here.
You're going to land the spaceship? I'm like at the other planet.
What are some of the obstacles standing in the way of the big change? I mean, I've made a list for myself here to rattle them off. You can do all of the above.
I'll tell you the one obstacle.
Okay, what's the one?
It's the one. It's forget lawyers and the legal institution, the human tendency is to not change. Human beings, as a part of our comfort and our psychological safety, develop routines. Our brains, our computers, our behavior sets, our algorithms, and we just want to repeat. And folks like us bringing in technology, we're breaking patterns. And nobody likes that. I don't like that. I just moved. And the moment all that stuff went in the truck, it was like you feel your pattern breaking and the literal floor is shifting beneath you. And it's terrifying. So I really empathize when we show up at companies and we're all like, pew, pew, CLM, I'm going to make everything you do better. I really understand why they look at me and go, who does this person think they are? The audacity of this person. And so you have to be really, really sensitive to that, humble to that, and a visionary, and be able to cast something big so they believe you enough, but then be really humble and know how to meet them back where they are, because the human behavioral piece will take the space shuttle down. I mean, literally, I sat with that astronaut, Eileen Collins from NASA, at the Space Beach Law Lab. You were there, Memme. And I said, what's the hardest thing you ever did in your career? This woman flew 5 shuttles to the International Space Station, to outer space. And she said the hardest thing I ever did was as a CIO in the company, rolling out a tech project.
Really?
And getting people to all form in line towards the new goal.
Because you've got to drag them along.
Because of the
to
dragging
a vision.
along. And there's always one
Yeah.
who fights. And at the end, and I saw this when I was at Netflix, there was always one person or a small team who on day of go live or training, they'd come to the table and they'd go, you know what? Never mind. I'd be like, what do you mean, never mind? I just slided you to death, brought you on a journey. We've been in requirement sessions. I've been baking you brownies in the shape of the N. Like, what do you mean, never mind? And they would go, we're just not going to do this. We like our old way. And
Yeah.
the hard part of Netflix was there's no like hardcore rules there that you have to, says IT or else. It's a softer, like, you should want to do this, so you're innovative.
And you would think the companies with innovation at their genesis would be so immensely open to that.
No, it turns out there's still human beings who behave like the rest of them. They're not. But that's no slam on Netflix. Netflix, all in all, it is more innovative. I've never seen legal departments adopt G Suite and G Docs so fully. Like, I would say, I came in 5.5 years ago, but by like my 4 years ago, the whole department was using G-Docs for drafting. And I was so impressed because I never thought we'd get Microsoft Word out of lawyers' hands. And there they were dealing with G-Docs, which is an inferior product to Microsoft Word, but it is superior at multi-collaboration real time on the dock.
Right.
And they favored that because that gave them all more speed to completion. So super innovative. And that technology would not ever get in at a Cisco. And so Cisco's moving at a different pace of drafting and lobbing the version. So because the company is baked in innovation, it comes up from the ground in a way, and you see them move and you're like, oh my God. And then I tried to put in a doc management solution, which I told them on my interview would fail and will never work, but they gave me some runway to prove it to them and some budget. So I was like, watch this. And we did a proof of concept, and I couldn't get it to work faster than their natural speed now in G-Docs. Their agility in G-Docs was really good. So you have these pockets coming up in all the companies that adopt newer tech, and it is slowly changing all the lawyers. And I'm excited to see how, like, when people your kids' age, like your kids are going to college or just starting in their careers now, these kids came up in G Suite in school.
Yeah.
They don't know what a pencil is. They don't have handwriting. They can't read cursive. When they become the lawyers of and the professionals, will they be in these companies and expect just a whole order of magnitude more than what we all know now, because we've come from analog to fully digital. We're the transitional.
Yeah.
We're the cavemen discovering fire.
They're collaborating at a level that goes way beyond, which as parents, of course, we're learning means we're never out of the loop, because anything they want to draft, it's like we're live together in G-Docs on FaceTime, having the conversation. But I mean, the effect of that is, boom, they're turning stuff around and they're learning super fast.
Yeah. I thought David Wilkins' concluding thoughts on this is not a technical problem we're solving.
Yeah.
It's an adaptive problem. And the biggest obstacle and the only obstacle is people, because the money's there to fund all this stuff, and you have ops people, tech people who want to put it in. But will the people actually change the way they do ABC so that it now works a little more like DEF? That's hard. And the skills we need to have to bring them on their journey through that are deep people skills. Nothing taught in a school. It's just taught from experience. And things like reading and being empathetic.
And that ties it all back to your third pillar, storytelling.
Yeah.
Because without that, you can't get anyone aligned around what you need to achieve. And you need the data to fuel that storytelling, show the benefits. Show that, you can get results.
Yeah.
Excellent. Jenn McCarron, thank you so much for joining us here at Harvard Law School, for speaking to our students today, joining the Executive Innovation Summit, then also sitting down for today's interview.
Thanks for having me,
We're
guys.
looking forward to CGI.
Yeah, CGI, Las Vegas, May 6th and 9th. That's CLOC Global Institute. It's going to be our biggest one yet. You guys will be there.
Absolutely.
We're going to rock and roll.
Can't wait. See you at the ARIA.
See you.
Thanks, Jenn.
Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast, is brought to you by Eversort. To learn more about Eversort and how we can help you contract better with AI, visit Eversort, EVISORT.com.
You can find Meeting of the Minds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you won't miss future episodes.
On behalf of everyone here at Eversort, thanks for tuning in.